All right. So, we talked about the first one, which is the traditional review, normal narrative review that we do every time. This paper actually identified 14 types of reviews. This was a 2009 paper that identified 14 types of reviews that we can conduct. But what's the noise about systematic reviews? Why is systematic types of review method is actually something that everyone wants to get into? The first thing is that we are trying to make sense of research because several people have answered different questions. I mean, have provided different answers to the same question. We have seen research work where some people have said, okay, we found, let's say we have 10 studies, five says we found significant answers, 5 says we didn't find significant answers. So if we sit down at a policy table or to make decision, what should be the decision about that problem? When 5 studies are saying this is not significant and others are saying this is significant. I mean, what we are seeing is significant. So because different questions, I mean, the same questions have been answered differently, then we need to make sense around that. How do we make decisions about that? Then we have information overload. A lot of works are being produced annually. So we need to find a way to summarize them, to bring them together such that when we want to make decisions, when we want to, make decisions, when we want to maybe provide an intervention in clinical settings or maybe in general life settings, we are able to make such decisions. Please keep my slide on the screen, please. They can see me. So we're also trying to make justification for future research. Technical room, please keep my slide on the screen. Thank you. So we're also trying to facilitate access to relevant research. As we see, publication biases is they are one of the very, very important things that systematic reviews are trying to take care of. So so these are some of the reasons why there's a noise about systematic review. We are trying to have better accountability in terms of transparency, reproducibility, which we'll still delve into all this deeper and deeper. We are just getting started. Then we have many effective treatments and alternatives. So we need to know which of these effective treatments is most cost-effective or which one is most potent and things like that. So these are part of, and then of course the issue of cost. We are trying to avoid waste by replicating research now and then. So when we look at the evidence synthesis family, starting from, this is called the evidence pyramid. It's a graphical representation of the power of evidence on a pyramid. So we have review articles right at the base of the pyramid, textbooks, expert opinions, and things like that, saying that, of course, we have more of all this in terms of number, but they have the least power in terms of evidence. If we are trying to say we want to make decision about something, or want to say, okay, this problem, let's say malaria, for instance, and maybe UNIMED researchers have said, okay, we can use the intervention. Some other researchers from everywhere are saying we can not use that intervention. We have a lot of all those single studies, individual case reports along the line, observational studies. So all those are at the base of the evidence pyramid because they are just of single cohort studies, individual studies that are not bringing things together. Then the quality of evidence or the power of evidence increases when we get to the level of things like clinical trials. We all understand this process. Maybe you have a basic, if we have a problem, for instance, you can have a basic research that says, okay, let's test if this, all these things that our science people do, get some leaf, some plants and see if it works for this condition and all that. So we now take it to clinical trials to try it in human subjects to see, okay, is it actually working as we had it in the animal subjects? So we have the randomized, we have the non-randomized. So those ones are at higher level of evidence that, okay, the clinical trial actually proved that this is correct. So But if we now go higher, beyond that, we also have some types of evidence that are much more, they are much more reliable in terms of power. And those include the systematic reviews, meta-analysis, which are the peak of evidence. That is, the peak of what we have in terms of evidence are the systematic review and meta-analysis. So all those single studies that we are conducting, a survey, an experimental study in the lab and all that, those ones are just single studies that everyone is doing in his own corner. But when we now bring them together in a systematic way, in a structured way, in a methodical way, then we have the peak of evidence currently available in terms of systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Are we still together, please? Okay. We have a lot to go up within these 3 days. So, and this workshop is designed to be interactive. So if at any point you need to pause me and ask questions, please do not hesitate. Just indicate, and it's meant to be interactive. So let's make it so. Thank you. Okay. So we talked about the fact that the meta-analysis and systematic reviews are the peak of evidence. That is, when we are, in research, what we are trying to do, I do say this, what we are trying to do is to find the truth. What's the truth? What's the, which drug works? What's the truth of this situation? We are always trying to find the truth. So when we now say this is the evidence for the truth, thank you. So that's what this report actually discussed, and it's a consensus study report titled Reproducibility and Replicability in Science. And in chapter 7 of that book, of that report, it states that evidence synthesis is a robust mean for gaining confidence, gaining confidence in scientific knowledge over time. So an elaborate or comprehensive way of gaining confidence in science, and a method for assessing the reliability and validity of the body of science. I have a graphical summary of that book in 1 minute. Let me just quickly show us. So that report that talks about, this is a graphical representation of the abstract. And it says that one of the ways that we, and it says that one of the ways that we, I would like to restart. Sorry, apologies, please. Okay, so that report is saying that although there are several studies that have been conducted as scientific, this is just going off this technical room. It's just going off. Sorry about that. So the report says that although there are several studies that are being conducted and new discoveries are being made in science, but there must be a way by which we are able to verify what science is saying. Every time there is new discovery, we must be able to repeat and validate whatever is coming up in science. However, it defines reproducibility as the fact that we are using the same data to actually get the same results, while replicability is about using different data to get consistent results. But the problem is that when there are some situations where we have non-replicability, we are not able to replicate the study, and which sometimes is good, but at other times it could be a problem because some people are doing fraud, because there could be mistake, there could be bias, and we need to be able to examine the replicability and reproducibility of our studies. And that is what that report is actually telling us, that as researchers, a very important concern for us is that whatever we are doing must be replicable. I mean, the methods must be well described such that others can replicate and verify the validity of whatever we are doing. Okay, yeah, it says the responsibility begins with every researcher. who should take care to explain the uncertainty inherent in their study and describe the methods and data in a clear way. So that's what the report says, to actually let us know that evidence synthesis, replicability and reproducibility is a very important thing in science, and evidence synthesis sits at the top of that. Okay, so we started with some introduction to the types of evidence synthesis or review families, the members of review families, and we'll just quickly run through those. We have the normal, our traditional review that we do every time. They usually have broad-based questions, they are not structured, and they are named in different ways: narrative, narrative summary, critical review, literature review, and so on. Those are traditional reviews that we conduct every time. So they are usually summaries of evidence on a topic. You are trying to say, okay, what's the what backs up what I've found, or what refutes it, and things like that. But the problem is that there could be personal biases. There is something we call P hacking. You might be working towards a significant P, so you are not interested in other things that are saying it's not significant while doing that review, so which is not the right thing. And then we have publication bias. Language bias is an issue too, and also small sample size is also another important issue. That sample size is one of the reasons why we can't take a single study and use that to make decision. So if you have done a study, your outcome is actually how reliable can we say what you are bringing up is actually representative of what the population variable, or what representative of what the population is actually saying. So those are part of the issues with narrative review that systematic reviews want to correct. Then we have other types of reviews. The review of reviews known as the umbrella review. We have rapid reviews. Rapid reviews were very important during the early days of COVID, when things were going on very fast, and people wanted to know what can we do to this, what will work, what interventions have been existing that we can apply. So there were a lot of rapid reviews conducted during the early days of COVID-19, because they actually reduces the methodological requirement of a systematic review to make sure it is done in a short time. And that's why they are called rapid review. For a systematic review, as you see, it takes time. So it takes time to do, but for a rapid review, it jumps a number of the steps to make sure we have a quick answer to where we are going. So it says that the rapid review accelerates the process of conducting systematic reviews by streamlining or omitting some of the steps, some of the methods that are inherent in the systematic review method. It omits them. And the aim is to make sure that we have a limited scope of review question, do things quicker and all that. And then there's a Prospero fast-tracking process for, we understand Prospero as we go on. Prospero fast-tracking process in terms of registering rapid reviews. Okay, so another member of the family is the scoping review. And we might have been hearing about this too. Which is a preliminary. It's like we are trying to see what are the available evidence in overall without, let's look at it broadly before we narrow down to a systematic review question. So we are trying to say, okay, it's a preliminary assessment. Usually a scoping review leads to a systematic review, and then systematic review leads to meta-analysis. That's usually the trend. But you can conduct a scoping review on its own, because all of these have methodological requirement that we'll be talking about in the next 3 days. So scoping review may help us to identify viable review topics, that is systematic review topics, and then it's usually address questions that are broad in nature. It may not be talking about does a particular intervention bring a particular result? Is it effective for a particular issue? But it may be looking at maybe a broad number of interventions together and trying to synthesize information on them. And one important thing is that, as we'll see in the steps to systematic review, is that scoping review usually lack a step of study quality assessment. That stage in systematic review is skipped when it comes to scoping review. So, like I said, we still have lots and lots of the different types of reviews. We still have the one that some people put together as purposive reviews. Those are, they say these are some of the, what we call the big picture reviews. Scoping review is subsumed under that. We still have evidence gap mapping and all that. So there are several of these that we can still conduct beyond systematic. And why it's important to understand that all these types of reviews exist is that you shouldn't be locked to just systematic reviews, especially when resources or the time is not available to actually do a proper systematic review. So, we've been talking systematic review. What is systematic review itself? So it's a method, it's a research method that answers a question by analyzing studies. More specifically, it's an attempt to collate, identify, collate, and systematically synthesize evidence from various sources to answer a specific question. So a template of an example of a question that a systematic review we want to look into is maybe what is the effectiveness of a certain intervention X on a certain population Y in achieving a certain outcome Z. So for instance, that's what we have down here. What's the effectiveness of pump irrigation system on average yield, irrigated area, labor demand, and all that for smallholder farmers? So we are trying to see, is this, and systematic reviews are not just for, although they've been more applied in health and medical sciences, the scope of reviews have actually gone beyond health and medical sciences. We now have social sciences, and we have several other types of reviews that people are conducting. So, in a book by the Institute of Medicine, it says that systematic review is a scientific investigation that focuses on a specific question. Please note that, a specific question. That is very important when it comes to systematic review. We can't be bringing questions, several questions together. I've had people in my office that we discuss, maybe they bring their question and I say, this is too broad for a systematic review. So a specific question is what a systematic review is trying to do, and it uses specific, explicit, predefined method to identify, to select, to assess, and summarize findings. So there are specific methods that you say, how do you identify your findings? How do you bring them together? There are specific things to follow, guidelines and frameworks to follow to get that done. Okay, so this table is a comparative analysis between a narrative, that is a normal literature review that we do, and a systematic review. And it looks at the review question for a normal literature traditional review. It says that the questions addressed are broad, as I've said before, while the questions for a systematic review are very narrow, well defined. Solid selection, quality assessment, synthesis, all these yardsticks were considered, and then there was like a crosstab to see, okay, what are the differences. One important thing is the quality assessment. In many of the literature review that we do, naturally, traditional literature review, we usually don't assess the quality of the work that is done. We just say, okay, Pokola 2015 says that a human being can work with their head, and so we just put it there. That's what we found. But we normally don't go deep into how did Pokola came to this assertion or to this conclusion, and that is something that is important in systematic reviews. How did these scientists get to this result? So the quality assessment of every study is part of a systematic review process. So also the synthesis, usually narrative for a literature review, qualitative, but for a systematic review, it could be qualitative, it could be a narrative synthesis, and in fact, you could have a meta-analysis that brings statistical analysis of different studies that have been done. Now bring all those studies together, statistically analyze them to find an effect size or to find a common ground. That, okay, if researcher A, B, C, D are saying different things, are reporting different p-values, how do we bring all those p-values together to have a single p-value to actually know if this is significant or not? Any questions so far, please? No question. If you have any question, please don't hesitate to. Oh, there's a question. Okay, sir. Yes, please.
And you went ahead to, if peradventure I've registered my own, and another person, and I've not really done much as per writing up the work. What step can I take if I now see similar, exactly how I've registered my own protocol, but somebody has gone ahead to publish, his own systematic review, and it's just like my own, protocol. What can I do?
All right, thank you very much, sir. That's a very brilliant question. One of the steps, as we will see, we are going to, like I said, we are going to go up a lot of things in these 3 days. One of the things that are part of, one of the steps in systematic reviews is, in fact, the very first step is to determine the need for a review. Can I have my screen, please? The very first step is to the very first step is to determine this need for it. Do we even need a systematic review at all? So, and in that stage, there are a lot of sources to be checked. So one of those sources is what Prof mentioned, that's Prospero, which is a registry of protocols. There are several other sources. And we as researchers, before we start, we must do due diligence to check across all those sources, because systematic review takes time. So before you start it, you must register it. So before you even register your own, you must have checked that, do we need to answer this review at all? But so now answer specifically Prof's question is that, well, I think what you might need to do is to look at what is lacking in their own study. Maybe scope-wise, or maybe they didn't cover some study design in the types of studies they included in their work. Maybe they didn't cover some types of literature, such as gray literature. We'll still mention some of these things. So you definitely need to look at a gap in their work so as to fine-tune whatever you are doing. Because definitely you can't be doing the same thing. And we are still going to talk more elaborately about this, sir. Thank you. So let me go back to where I was. Okay, yeah. Yes, please.
Thank you. I actually want to talk about the registration on Prospero to get the unique ID. Okay. So from what I know, as in from what I heard, that registering on Prospero, it takes time. A lot of time. And from what you said, that we need to check the need for a systematic review. There is possible that you might have checked those websites to check if someone has done something before and all that, and you discover that they have not done it, and you want to work on it, and before you finish registering your own, you start everything, and eventually you discover that someone has they later submitted and published. So what do you think we can do?
Thank you very much. Yeah. So yes, Prospero's registration actually takes time, and that's why we have some alternatives such as OSF and all that. We are still coming to registration as part of the topics we have for the next 3 days. So, but to quickly answer you is that if someone publishes a systematic review and you couldn't find a protocol about it before you started yours, it's possible that that person was not doing a systematic review, because you cannot do a systematic review without publishing the protocol first. Maybe published in journal or in registries such as Prospero's, OSF, and all that. So it must be somewhere. It's not something that will be hidden. So if you have done due diligence to search around and all that before, and then someone now publishes, what's it called, a review on that issue, that means you need to look at that review and look at the registration information of the protocol, because in every review there will be an information about the registration of the protocol. So, like I said again, if there are issues, you need to find a way to make yours distinct one way or the other. Okay, let's proceed, please. Okay, so we have looked at some of the differences between the normal literature review and the systematic review. And like I said, there are still lots and lots of types of review. This is a 2019 paper. Okay, this is a 2004. Oh, okay, the first one I showed was the 2019 paper, which identified 14 reviews. This identified 14 reviews. This is an earlier paper. One of the authors is still one of the authors in the other one too. So we are just trying to say that there are lots of different types of reviews that you can conduct. You don't necessarily have to pin yourself into systematic review if you don't have the resources, if you don't have the expertise, and if you don't have the time. So these are very important considerations. Otherwise, at the end of the day, you get your papers rejected after, over and over, after a lot of work. Because by the time you submit for a systematic review to be published, they are going to subject it to review by experts, content experts, that is people who know about what you are saying, and also method experts, people who know about systematic review and meta-analysis. So all this may come in and so it's important to understand that there are several types of reviews, as we have mentioned, and you can, all of them have. I could remember in 2018, I submitted a paper to this particular journal. Yes, interestingly, this journal. That was 2018 or 17, I can't remember, 17 or 18. And part of my title was a systematic review. Then I didn't know much about systematic reviews. Looking back, I also know now that it wasn't. But then they corrected me, and at the end of the day, after the review, we changed it to a literature review. As a rider to the title. So it was a systematic review that I submitted. But at the end of the day, after the review, and that's actually one of my most cited papers so far. So you don't necessarily have to make it a systematic review when it's not a systematic review. You can do your normal narrative review, put things together, do a rapid review, do a scoping. We are just about to publish a scoping review, myself, the Vice Chancellor, and some teams in South Africa and Ife. We've published the protocol in a journal, in a reputable journal. So you don't necessarily have to make it compulsorily systematic review. There are several types that you can go into trying to synthesize or making an evidence synthesis. So these are still more types. Our time for this morning is running out, so I'm very mindful of that. Okay, still more types. Okay, this is the 2019 by Sutton and Booth, and they identify more and more and more types of evidence synthesis of review types. Okay, maybe we should just, for the sake of making it interactive, looking at these two questions, which would you say is more suitable based on what we have said about scoping and systematic reviews? Which would you say is more, it looks like it's glaring. Which would you say is more suitable for a scoping review? A or B? A is at the top, B is below. For a scoping review. A is at the top, B is below. A or B? If you are sure, just indicate. No chorus answer. Who is saying B? I'm hearing B. Who are you? For scoping review. B. Okay. Anyone who is not agreeing with that? I thought we were understanding what I was saying. Okay. And A is for scoping. Okay. Because, thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm happy that some people understood what I was saying. I was beginning to be afraid. So one of the things we mentioned about scoping and systematic reviews, one of the differences is that scoping review looks at things broadly. You are just scoping the literature. Let's just bring everything that is available. Then we look at it together. But systematic review is very specific about what it wants to do. You can't put a lot of things together. Yes, we have situations. They say you can't put apple and orange together. We have situations where you want fruit salad, right? Yes, but in systematic review case, you have to be very sure if you want apple or all those other fruit salad. They are in different other types of reviews that we have mentioned. So for a scoping review, A we do and B we do for a systematic review. Okay, so let's look at the steps. what steps are we going to take in running a systematic review? And I'm going to show this to us from different perspectives. I think I came up with this. It's just a straightforward step.